Holy sh... What is going on YouTube? It's your boy Thunderbite29 here, and yep, I am back today with another documentary, and today we are going to be talking about the downfall of Battlefield 2042. As many people know, this game was a massive failure. But some people are wondering, what went wrong? Why did this game fail so badly as it did? So today, we are going to discuss everything that went wrong with Battlefield 2042 from the beginning to present. So, without further ado, let's begin the first segment. So we start from the very beginning when Battlefield officially released the trailer for Battlefield 2042 on June 2nd, 2021. It was met with a lot of positive reviews. A lot of people were so hyped and so excited for this new game. It even had 1.1 million likes. And around the same time, Call of Duty uploads a trailer for their newest game, which met with a lot of backlash, saying Call of Duty is once again trying to rip off World at War, and a lot of people were saying this is going to be another time where Battlefield dominates against Call of Duty. Like these comments right here. And what a surprise, much like Battlefield 4, 2042 is putting another COD game to shame. 2013, Battlefield 4 destroys Ghost. 2016, Battlefield 1 destroys Infinite Warfare. 2021, Battlefield 2042 destroys Vanguard. I am seeing the pattern. This is just an example. So many people were so confident in 2042. But then, after the beta was released and beyond that, people's feelings for the game began to change.
Oh, that's real nice.
Just like what you saw in the Ackman's clip, that's why most of the people hated the beta. They hated it for those specific reasons of why it was so glitchy and so buggy. That was just an example of some of the bugs and glitches that a lot of people had witnessed. And the gameplay was so broken as well. Even the gun gameplay was all messed up. Even the lack of customizations, a lot of people complained about this beta, a lot of people hated it for different reasons. But still, there was some people that were not gonna give up their hopes for the game so easily. But little did people know that this would have been the beginning of an unstoppable decline. The developers and the players themselves didn't know this either. But this was the beginning of an unstoppable decline. A lot of people suggested the game should have been delayed, which is now going to lead me to my next segment. Despite the beta receiving tons and tons of backlash from the player base, DICE and EA didn't take any acknowledge of the backlash. They completely ignored it like it was all normal. But in this segment, in my opinion, this is where I think the downfall for the game had really began. This was the moment where a lot of players' high spirits for the game all just crumbled. Like I had mentioned at the end of my last segment, a lot of people were saying the game should have been delayed.
If DICE and EA want this game to be great, fantastic, it needs to be delayed another year. It will suck, but in the long run, this is the route to making the game as good as it can possibly be.
Even though a year is a little too much, it still didn't matter. Even if it was 2 months, 6 months, or a year, it didn't matter because the results still would have been the same. And what the results was? No response or any acknowledgement, because they didn't even take the consideration of delaying the game. They just continued forward with their original plan of November 19th, which was one of their biggest mistakes. And biggest mistake number 2 was adding specialists into their game. Like every other Battlefield game, you had your nameless soldiers and you just jump right into the battlefield and gun other players down. Like in Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5. But nope, in this game, they have to add in specialist abilities like Black Ops 3. I mean, whose idea was this? Who thought this was going to be a great idea? And in the end, spoiler alert, it got tons and tons of backlash. And what was DICE and EA's response to the backlash? Let's keep them in the game. No problem. So they doubled down and kept them in permanently, basically. And that was just another big major flaw that caused so many players high spirits that they had for this game before to just crumble so fast. I mean, if you're a gaming developer and you're just going to sit there and ignore your player base despite all the backlash that you're receiving for like your changes and newer updates, you're literally just asking for your game to fail. Because you basically left your player base. You basically abandoned your player base. It's like the player base was just yelling and arguing to a mirror this entire time. And within 1 month after all this, things were about to go from bad to worse. Five and a half months later, on November 19th, 2021, the game had finally released. But long story short, it didn't do well. Because this was a quick time lapse of the first 3 days of the game's release. And it was met with nothing but terrible reviews. A lot of people expected the game to do bad, but a lot of people didn't expect it to do this bad. Like, this was definitely a very embarrassing start. And within 3 days of the game's release, Steam was now considering offering this game to be one of the top 10 worst games ever on Steam, as Steam had recorded 33,000 negative reviews within the first 3 days of the game's release. Like, this game was nothing but a massive disaster. This game was doomed at the start. And another thing that a lot of people hated about this game was the fact that there was no single player campaign. Meanwhile, Call of Duty Vanguard had a single player campaign. This game didn't. And that's why a lot of people started calling this game a big giant scam. Because not everyone buys into this game just for multiplayer, or spend $60 to $70 just for multiplayer. Some people play campaign too, but this game didn't have a campaign, it only had multiplayer. A lot of people call this game a giant scam because of that. I mean, there's no storyline in this game, so there's no reasoning or any explanation of what caused them to be where they're at. And one of the biggest problems and contributors to one of the biggest failures of this game was the fact that the game was so buggy and so glitchy, just like in the beta. Except it wasn't as bad as it was in the beta, as they fixed a few problems, but it wasn't enough to change the outcome of the game's results. A lot of people still hated it, a lot of people didn't like the gameplay of it, and the game was still broken. And here was a few problems that this game had, as I had mentioned in my original Battlefield 2042 rant. And after looking at all that, I'm just realizing, am I playing Battlefield or am I playing Call of Duty? Because this game just doesn't feel like the old traditional Battlefield games like I used to play, like Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, or Battlefield 5 even. It literally feels like Call of Duty. As this game continues to go farther and farther down the rabbit hole, we now move on to the next segment. Over 2 months had gone by since this game came out, and there's still no hope in sight that this game is ever going to rise again, or the high spirits of the players will ever come back to this game again. There's still no hope in sight. As we have now approached mid-January, this game had begun to witness record low number player counts on Steam. As of yesterday, this was the lowest player count ever recorded ever in the game's history. It had below 4,000 players. Meanwhile, at that same time in Battlefield 5, it had 3.5 times more players than Battlefield 2042 did, despite the game being 3.5 years old and also receiving a ton of backlash at its launch. Like, this is just absolutely embarrassing, and it is just absolutely embarrassing, and it's just crazy. It's been so bad that even the lead designer of this game stepped down 6 days after the game came out. And like I said before as well, this game has done so overwhelmingly bad on Steam that now they're even offering refunds. I mean, if you make a game that's new and it does so bad that now you have to offer refunds, that is just absolutely embarrassing. I cannot recall any game doing so bad at its launch that they had to start offering refunds. I have never seen that ever happen, especially with a Battlefield game. Battlefield never usually lets people down, but this game definitely let a lot of people down. And the game Call of Duty Vanguard, the game that Battlefield 2042 was supposed to dominate against, ended up being dominated by Call of Duty Vanguard. It's like playing the game Uno and someone pulled out the reverse card and then it went the other way around. That's what happened between Battlefield 2042 and Call of Duty Vanguard. The opposite happened. And now I approach my ending conclusion. What went wrong with Battlefield 2042? What had happened to this game that so many people were so excited for? What happened to this game that so many people were so excited for? It's hard to say, but not really this time, because of course you can easily blame the developers. You can blame the higher up leadership at DICE and EA, but you couldn't really blame the players because this was a game that was doomed at the start, and it only took 2 months for this game to die. But what really happened? But in my opinion, I think the number one thing that really went wrong with this game was the fact that DICE and EA completely turned their backs on its player base. It's like the developers of this game were so confident with their game that they turned their backs on the player base, despite all the backlash that the beta received and all their new updates and proposals had received. Like the specialist idea or the game needing to be delayed. They basically just left the player base, basically just turned their backs on their player base. It's like the player base was talking to a mirror the entire time, but not really to them. They didn't take any acknowledgement to any of the criticism. They didn't take any responsibility for their own failures or actions. And the number one question I still continuously ask myself to this day is, who do we blame for this catastrophe? Do we blame the developers? Or do we blame the higher up leadership at DICE and EA? Those handful of individuals who tell the developers to do this or that? Who do we blame for this catastrophe? Who is responsible for this catastrophe? And another question I continuously ask myself, if they are really trying to fix these problems now, why are they deciding to fix the problems now, but not fix them months before, or 2 months before the game even released? Why did they not fix them immediately after the beta? Or why did they not consider delaying the game? We may never get an answer to those questions. And to close this video, it was just really sad to see this game that a lot of people were so excited for, that looked like a really great game, into becoming one of the biggest disasters in modern gaming history. And I hope a disaster like this never happens again to another game. And this is Thunderbite29, signing off for now. Thank you all so much for watching.